Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Maine SBDC webinar. My name is Kelsey Reardon, and I am with the state office right in Portland, hosted by USM. And we are joined by another USM business advisor, Chris Cole. So today we're going over starting a food business and what licensing comes along with that. And Chris is one of our food business specialists, so to speak. She has a lot of experience with food businesses. She owned a restaurant for many years and has sold products, baked goods, and sauces alike. And so she's going to be answering all of your food business questions today. If you are not familiar with the Maine SBDC, we are the Small Business Development Centers, and we are in an SBA funded program. So we provide no cost to you confidential business advising. And on our website, there's a big orange button that says request advising. That's the fastest way to get into our system and established with a business advisor. I will be sending out some follow-up information after today's presentation, and that will include a link to the recording as well as the slides in the presentation. So all of the links that she mentions will be clickable in those slides. Additionally, I will include all of our contact information, so it'll be easy to request advising or to reach out to me or Chris if you have any questions at all. In the meantime, go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat below, and we'll make sure that they get answered during the Q&A session at the end if we don't cover it along the way. But otherwise, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Thanks for that introduction, Kelsey. I really appreciate it. So today, what I'd like people to do is just put in the chat what business or industry you're in or what you're interested in going into. That way we can kind of have an idea where everybody's at. Of course, Kelsey told you who I am, and this is my contact information. I always like to put this slide in here. It just shows that we are advisors throughout the state of Maine, and you can physically go to a location, but these days you certainly can go to us virtually via Zoom. All right, our agenda for today, we're going to talk about specifically these licenses, which I think are the top ones most people are interested in getting into. So when we look at a personal chef, this is a person that goes to an individual home to do a private function, but they are performing the entire act of cooking in that home. So you're somebody that is buying the food, or their owner is providing the food, and you're doing all the preparations start to finish right in the home. If that's what you're doing, you do not need a license. However, if you decide that you're going to make food outside of the home and bring it in, so you've produced it in your kitchen or another kitchen, that license requires a commercial kitchen certification, and that comes from DHHS. Personal chefing is a great way to get into the industry. It's actually one of the things that I did, one of the many things I did in the food world. I really loved it. I made 5 meals for a family every week, and soup and baked goods. So it's also a good way if you want to break. As of note, I just put in here about the tax code. So this is interesting. It's kind of a change or something new to me, but apparently if you're preparing food that you've brought into somebody's home that it's ready for consumption without further preparation, then you actually have to collect tax on it. So you just want to check on that. We're not going to go into that today. That's another issue for another day. But we will talk about all these licenses that are issued from the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, in particular, the Division of Quality Assurance and Regulations. So there are 2 departments primarily in the state of Maine that issue anything to do with food licensing. This is one. The other one, as I said before, is DHHS, and we'll talk about those licenses shortly. Under this one, we have our home kitchen producers, commercial kitchen, the bakery, seafood, beverages, and That doesn't include alcoholic beverages. That's a whole other license. Maple syrup producers. So those are all under here. And then the other ones that we don't really get into, slaughterhouses and food salvage, which was something new to me, but apparently that's reusing food to for soup kitchens or to resell. And here's a contact information for Department of Agriculture. These people are great to work with if you have any questions. Keep that for your reference, give them a call. They'll be happy to help. All of these agencies really want you as a producer, as a seller, as an owner to succeed. And here's a link to the permits and licenses. And, you know, really what they want you to do is make sure that the products that you're producing are made in a correct fashion, in a sanitary place. The facility is inspected, you're in good working order with your equipment. And then here we also have the specific laws and rules. If you click on the link below, that will get you to those, and food inspection. And then there's a list of other permits. I know we had somebody call in that is a beekeeper and they were interested in this. So you would go for the other permits, and there's a separate form if you're doing beekeeping, honey production as an apiary. For your home kitchen, this is a great way to start because it's really cost effective. So basic rules for sanitation, they are looking for non-absorbent surfaces. Things have to be clean and smooth. You can't use that old cutting board you've been using for everything else. It's made out of wood, you know, and just the area around it. And the other thing I didn't list here is that it also has to be a separation from your pets too. So you can't have pets while you're producing. There's a water requirement. The kitchen has to have a 2-bay sink or 1-bay if you're using the dishwasher, and you need an adequate supply of water. So hot and cold with good pressure, and then they'll do a temperature test on that. Now, if you're getting your water from a private well, that does require annual testing. Those tests cost between $40 and about $120. Most of the time you can get them for the $40 rate. If you're using public water, that's already approved. So it's had all the testing, it's considered potable. And then the wastewater, if you're on your own septic, you need to submit a septic design with the license, and you have to do it every year. If you don't have the septic design in your home, go to your town. They should have it on file. If they don't have it on file, you're probably going to have to get one made. What I did is I went to my town, got the copy of it, and then I made many copies. So every year I have one ready to go. The other thing they're looking about is temperature control. So you have to have a thermostat inside your refrigerator. You know, everybody pretty much new refrigerators shows the temperature on the outside, but they're looking for one that's a standalone, and you need it in every single refrigeration unit that you're using as part of your production. They only cost probably about $3 to $5 at the most each. Can get them anywhere, Webstron online or independent restaurant supplier or restaurant supplier near you. And then you don't need a home food license if you're just selling fresh produce, not stuff that you cut up. That's a whole other thing. But if you're just selling vegetables and fruit or eggs, and it's a very small farm, so you don't need license for that. I'm going to get into a little bit more here about the most popular things that people make at home, because again, for a home license, we're talking about items that are shelf stable. So these, we're not talking about items that are considered hazardous food, and we'll discuss that shortly. But when we're talking about shelf stable items, all canned goods, any sauces, pickles, dressings like that, you have to submit your samples to the University of Maine for food testing or to another approved laboratory. So what they're looking for here is they want to make sure that your recipe has to be standardized. You have to submit it by weight. So get yourself a digital scale, have your recipe be codified as well. And then the test that they usually do perform, they always do pH. They're going to do the water test, and they'll probably do a Brix test. All of those total, they're each about $25. So you can count on $75 per item for that testing. And that's really because, botulism is probably one of the worst foodborne illnesses you can contract. Makes you very sick. It can paralyze you. And worse than that, it can cause death. And when we talk about food labeling, all products that are sold outside of the home have to be labeled. And the way the label works is just your ingredients in order of most to least. So if you're making barbecue sauce and, tomatoes is your biggest ingredient, that's got to come first, all the way down to whatever spices you put in. And the label has to have the weight on it as well. And then you need your name, address, and zip code of the producer. So it doesn't have to be your specific name. Like, I don't have to put Chris Cole on mine, but I do have to put my company name on it. And that way people can contact you if they have any questions or issues. Now, you don't have to do nutritional labeling if you're a small producer and it shows here the amounts that they're talking about. You're exempt from nutritional labeling when it comes to the smaller amounts. But if you do have to do nutritional labeling, here's a link to this nutrition lab, and they're actually located in Maine. They've been in business since the mid-90s. They do a great job. So you can, and they have information there. You can reach out to them. I'm not sure what their pricing is, but excuse me, if you're going to go into high volume, you're going to need to have that nutritional labeling, and they'll help you get that so it's ready to go to market. And here I just listed some more information about being a home food producer and some of the courses that you can take through the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, and also just some publications that are free. Gives you a little more education about how the food processing process works. And like I said, when we talk about potentially hazardous food, you're going to need to do that in a commercial kitchen. So these are foods that require refrigeration or freezing to be able to maintain their temperature. Again, these are foods that can not live between 41 and 135 degrees, which is what we consider the temperature danger zone. Mostly we're talking about milk and egg products, fish, meat, with the exception of jerky. That's different. And that's something the University of Maine actually tests for as well. But some good examples that people think are, fine, but they're really not, like fresh salsa and pesto. Those items definitely have to be produced in a commercial food setting. So for more information, you can click on the Maine Food Code. It's about 170 pages long. However, it does have good detailed information about how to process and work with what's considered potentially hazardous foods. Now, a mobile vendor's license, we always suggest to people that if you're going to fill out the food and fuel license for an additional $20, click on this, the mobile vendor's license. It's great because it allows you to go off premise and sell at fairs and festivals. And of course, you have to be already approved with your food and fuel license. So they're kind of concurrent, or you have to be selling products from somebody who is approved with their food and fuel license. Now, don't confuse this with being a mobile vendor like food carts, food trucks, etc. That goes under DHHS, and we'll be talking about that shortly. Dairy products, this comes under a separate license. And these are the items, in general, you're looking at getting licensed when you're producing any type of dairy product. What they're looking for there, you've got to fill out their application for that. There's a link to that. Also, the fee. Usually, if you're a smaller producer, that fee is around $25. So it's not really that expensive. And then you get a complete inspection by the dairy inspector. The water, again, we're always making sure our water sources are safe. We have to worry about contamination. And then with the dairy inspection, they're looking for the health of your animals as well. And product labeling. Great resource throughout the state. These are the different areas that they cover. You can contact them directly to set up an inspection in your area. And the dairy inspection program throughout the state of Maine is also conducted by state inspectors that are regulated and certified by the FDA, which means that your products can be sold across state lines. And, you know, for that, basically, you just need to have your inspection done semi-annually. They're going to test your dairy products, whether it's yogurt or cheese, or if you're selling goat's milk raw, that's done by the Maine Quality Laboratory testing. And you're going to submit those along with your water samples for certification. I listed some more information specific to that. And then if you have any general questions about having a dairy inspection done, there's a link and there's the phone number to give them a call. So we move from Department of Agriculture to Department of Health and Human Services. And these are all of the businesses that fall under that, which it's quite a few, right? Basically, any eating and lodging business falls under that. The most popular ones are catering. For years and years, you could cater from your own home. Unfortunately, because there were some issues of people getting food poisoning from catering events that were done from home kitchens and not from a licensed commercial kitchen, the state changed the rules to make sure that all caterers have to use a licensed kitchen. Can be in your home, but it has to be a separate kitchen from your own home use. And it has to meet all of the requirements of the Maine Food Code. It has to be licensed under DHHS. So again, sanitary facility, your equipment in good working order. They're looking for temperature control, and you also need to be certified food handler. So those are the requirements now to be a caterer. The next one we're looking at are food trucks and food carts. These have been popular at least for the last decade, if not more. I think many restaurants do this in conjunction with, you know, their brick and mortar location, but this is a great way for people to get started too. It's a lot less overhead than a brick and mortar location. And to get licensed for that, there's a whole guide that the state has put together. And I really like this guide because it shows a diagram of a food truck and a diagram of a food cart and what they're looking for, you know, how it should be constructed. It's got to be completely self-contained so that you can do everything within that one unit. You can store, you can prepare, you can serve the food right from there. These get licensed annually. And they're inspected, they say every 2 years. Restaurants are supposed to be inspected every 2 years. I'm really not sure that the state can get to every single place every 2 years, but be prepared for the fact that they should get to you every 2 years. In a lot of cases, food trucks and carts can't support all of those things. So a commissary kitchen is required. And in the cases of restaurants that have a mobile unit, you know, they usually use their restaurant kitchen as their commissary kitchen. But if you don't have your own, you can look to rent one. And I have a list we're going to get to in just a minute on those. And excuse me, before you start any one of these businesses, mobile cart, tent, or a food truck, make sure that you apply, you know, 30 days ahead of time. It takes at least that long before an inspector can get to you and make sure that you're in compliant and issue that license. And then these are just some of the requirements, but basically there are 3 classifications of mobile units, low, moderate, and high risk. You have to submit your menu, and then that will be determined by the health inspector, which category you fall into, and that determines the type of equipment that you need. For your mobile unit, you need a person in charge of the unit. that person has to be certified for proper food safety handling, and be able to share that knowledge with other employees and just be in charge that the food's being handled and stored properly, temperatures are being controlled, and there's not any cross-contamination. And here's a list of some commissary kitchens. More are springing up, which is great. And that link on the top, it's really good. I recently found that, but you can click on that and it shows different ones throughout the state. I did try when I got into that website to click on some of the links they had to those kitchens, but they don't all work, but they do have phone numbers. So you can look in there and then find phone numbers. Of course, Fork Food Lab right here in Portland is really well known. That's a membership-based program. And then you purchase different levels depending on the amount of time that you need in the kitchen. Brunswick has their own, actually the Portland Public Market, or it's now the Portland Market, I guess is what it's called. They have a commissary kitchen too. And then Maine Food Forge, that's quite a nice facility up in Whitefield, and Camden has one. Bangor is currently working on getting a commercial kitchen together. And the last I saw was in May. So I haven't seen any updates on that. If you are in the Bangor area and you're looking for a commercial kitchen, I would just call the city of Bangor and see where that's at. All right, so municipal food licensing. Now this is, you have your state license, but if you are located in Portland, South Portland, or Lewiston, these are the only ones that we know of to date, and they're the only ones required by the state for a separate application. So if you're in those cities and you're a mobile vendor and you don't plan on going anywhere outside of the city limits, then you're able to just get their license. But if you plan on operating beyond those cities, so if you want to take your truck or your cart to another town, or host a wedding somewhere else outside of the city limits, then you do need to apply for the municipal eating and lodging license. That is less expensive than the eating and lodging license for the state, and that's because you're already paying that Portland or South Portland extra money and fees, and they do their own inspections as well. So that license is usually $60 per location. And then once you do, submit that license, you still need to make sure that your city knows that you're going to be operating. So you have to be within their requirements. And here's the link to those 3 cities that I was telling you about. Each one has a little bit different requirements and fees. Brick and mortar. So we got our restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, places like that. That is your regular eating and lodging license. So anything that's highlighted, that's a link to it. What you are required to fill out that license, you need your propose what your business is going to be: a cafe, a bistro, the number of seats, the water sources and uses, wastewater disposal. So again, if you're on something private, they're going to want that septic plan. If your water is private, it's going to have to be tested. They want to look at your menu, kitchen layout. They provide you with a piece of grid paper. Basically, you're supposed to draw out your kitchen. If you can do it to scale, that's great. I actually had somebody who worked for me who's really talented, and we did all the measurements and she drew it out to scale. So that was something new, because when I first got my license, that wasn't a requirement. And then when I got another restaurant and had to get a new license for that restaurant, I had to have it drawn out. But if you don't draw it to scale, you got to make sure that you put your measurements on the equipment and the distance between the equipment. They have to list what you have. They want your hours of operation. And then if you're doing table service, so the type of service that you're doing, they also want to know how many bathrooms that you have, and certified food protection manager. you need to have one of those people on staff before you're able to open your doors. That is a requirement of the state. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, if this license does not cover alcohol, so this is just for food. If you're looking for an alcohol license, that is a separate department and separate application. And here are the fees. So for the most part, traditional, in-house eating place, they're going to charge you for the number of seats that you have. That's usual. And then there are flat fees for other places. And again, with lodging, it's by the number of rooms that you have. This is an overview of what you're going to expect in the inspection. So I showed you what they're asking for in the application. And when you submit the application, make sure you send a check because they like to have money before they'll do anything. And then this is what an inspection in your kitchen covers. The equipment, of course, refrigeration, and also like your heating units, making sure that items in there are in the correct temperature. So you don't want anything in the temperature danger zone. We know temperature danger zone is between 41 and 135 degrees. So hot foods have to be stored hot, like they say, cold foods cold. So hot foods above 135, cold foods below 41 degrees. They're looking to make sure that you know how to handle food properly. So it's great that somebody has a certification, but if they come in and they see that somebody's cutting chicken on the board and then they turn around and grab a head of lettuce and cut it on the same board, cross-contamination. They're making sure that the individuals working have good personal hygiene. They're wearing the appropriate attire, hair restraints, gloves when they're handling food. Food's got to obviously be stored in the proper place. Chemicals separate from food. You want to make sure your utensils, dishes, all of that in the right place. Well-lit storage areas are really important, a well-lit kitchen, and that the lighting has the safety glass on it. So in case it breaks, it's not going to end up in a food product. Rodent and insect control can't be helped in a lot of restaurants. We know that, but you have to make sure that you have some types of controls going on so they're not coming into the food working area. And then things like fire suppression are really important. So you have your ancillary system in good working order, fire extinguishers, and those get checked on an annual basis. And that's usually done by a separate company that tags them and gives the dates on them. And then on your menu, they're looking for that consumer advisory. So that's for hazardous foods, undercooked eggs, undercooked meat, if you're serving shellfish, all of that listing has to be on there. And then the required posters like hand washing, the food temperature control chart. That last link there goes and gives you those posters. So I know lots of times companies, well, as restaurant owners or cafe owners, they want to sell you these posters, but the state provides them for free. So you can go there and click on that. And it's a great list. I just loved that map of the state of Maine that shows the inspectors. And really, it's a huge area they have to cover, but it's great because it highlights where they are and who they are. We've got their phone numbers there. To talk to somebody right in the state inspector's office, my best resource has been Lisa Salva. She's great to talk to, so you can call the state inspector's office directly if you have any questions or issues. And they also have the local, so if you're in Portland, South Portland, Lewiston, there are those inspectors in those areas. We talked about this serves food protection manager requirement. ServSafe has been around for many, many years. It used to just be a recommendation. Now it's a requirement. And it's a really good thing to have. It teaches proper handling of food, holding times, talks about the different foodborne illnesses. And we know that, just from stories in the news, E. coli, botulism, things like that, not only do they make you really sick, but they can kill you. So we want to make sure that people are handling food properly. Whoever is in your establishment that is ServSafe certified or, food protection manager certified should have those posted. Not should, it's a requirement that they're posted in a place where the inspector can see it. And it's a really good idea to have more than one person certified. You're only required to have one, but it's a good education, especially if you have long-term staff. You want them to be educated. I actually had myself and 4 other of my staff all had the certification. So it's good because that can be the person that other people go to. And that's really the person that's going to be responsible to make sure that everybody else is, handling the food properly, not cross-contamination, that they're throwing out things that are good. They're making sure things are dated, keeping chemicals separate. That's what the certification really addresses. And technically, if your manager who's ServSafe certified goes away, within 60 days, you have to hire somebody to replace that person. I listed here some more food safety training opportunities that are provided by the state. You don't have to do these if you don't want to, but a lot of them are really good and specific to industry, depending on what you're doing. So knowledge is power, especially when you're working with what can be considered kind of a dangerous product and when you're serving the public. I think these are great courses. Some of them are free. Most of them are a minimal charge. And those are the links that you can hook on to see. So once you've done all of your applications, here's an example of what your licenses look like. So that was my restaurant at one time. And then, like I said, well, I do have the updated one. It says last year on it, but my license is current. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then we can talk any questions that people have. And you can see my face again. Hold on 1 second. There we go. So.
Well, thank you. That was, I know it was a lot of information, but all of those links are going to be clickable in the slides that I send out later. We have gotten a bunch of questions, so if you have additional questions, go ahead and put them in the chat below, but I'll kind of make my way through there. So we have a lot of different food vendors, like you said, a lot of sauces and salsas and pickles and eggs and a couple food trucks and a couple of people who are looking into branching out from their current experience with what they're doing. Early on, when you were mentioning the labels that need to be on food, one of the questions was, is there any way around the address on the label requirement for folks who don't want their home address listed?
Right. That is something that you have to check with the state, and only because I'm not sure of the updated requirements. When I was doing production, that was in the mid-90s, and we had a PO box in Yarmouth. So we used the PO box and not the physical address. And I think it's just a way that consumers are able to contact you. So if you have a PO box, I believe that counts as a legal address. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your home, but they do have to be able to get a hold of you.
That makes sense. So if you are a home business, as long as you have a business entity address,
right,
that can be utilized. Okay. If opening a bar, could your kitchen space be licensed as a commercial kitchen that could be used during off hours, or maybe as a commissary kitchen to house food trucks on the premise?
It can, yep. So if you, there are a lot of people doing that now. They're renting their kitchens off hours, and really during, the height of COVID, when restaurants had to be closed, but people were still producing. I suggested some of my friends in the industry, I'm like, you should rent your kitchen so you can make some money, because there are a lot of food producers out there looking for it. But the license goes with the person, goes with the establishment. So it's kind of a funny thing, but even people that are using Fork Food Lab or places like that, they still have to get licensed themselves. So you can rent your kitchen, but you need to make sure that the individual gets licensed to do what they're doing within your kitchen. So even somebody who's that I used to rent a church kitchen, and church had its own license, but we had to have our license applied to that church. So they had to come in and inspect for us.
So there's that little bit of extra due diligence there, but
Right.
that's good to know. Love those shared resources. Does the consumer advisory, I believe the like posters, need to be on a catering or food truck, or is it only specific to brick and mortars?
It has to be on your menu. So if you're serving any of those items, so if you have a food truck and you're serving like egg sandwiches, you know, you have to have that on there. Or if you're doing like, I think raw oysters is really popular. So it has to be on your menu. It is a requirement.
That's fair. It wasn't the posters. That was my mistake. So yeah, that like if it's seafood or dairy or
Right. And it's
raw
just a little
foods.
blurb, but
Yeah.
you know, it's just a legal technical thing. It's kind of like the warning on cigarettes, right? So it's a requirement.
Yeah, I've noticed that like on the bottom of menus, and you
Yeah.
know, it's like, remember like eating raw. It's like at the sushi restaurants, there's always like a reminder, like raw fish can be dangerous, essentially.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know, but it's always good to have that reminder.
Sure.
We have a lot of thank yous, so I'll go ahead and just thank you again. Is for catering, what safe serve certification is required by the owner?
So it's the same. You're going to need the manager's food protection certification.
Okay. So another safe serve question. Someone is coordinating a new community kitchen, which is
Great.
great, and will be the Serve Safe Manager certified. Are our renters required to be Serve Safe certified? Not the manager. So is that kind of what you were touching on earlier?
Right. So my understanding, and I would definitely contact the state for clarification, but my understanding is even if you're renting a kitchen, you yourself as the business owner, so you're a separate business, but you're inside somebody else's business, you still have to get that certification for yourself.
Okay, but what about the renters? I guess is that they
Right.
would.
So if somebody's are you, I guess I need to understand if they're renting to do their own business, or like in the case of,
This is a
I know-
community kitchen, so
so
she's
it's a community kitchen and people, are they trying to start their own businesses? Are they selling products? Or are they just doing it for events? I'm not,
and Bree, feel free to jump in here and
yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself. Let me know.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot. You're welcome to come back to this question in a little bit. But it sounds like, yeah, it doesn't specify.
No, I can't hear you, Bree.
Peculiar.
Do you have
That's
everybody
silly.
muted, Kelsey?
I didn't. It looks like she's unmuted, so
Okay.
I'm not sure how
Okay,
to
they're
fix that.
selling their own products.
Yeah.
Yes, then they do need to, get certified. They do need to get their own licensing too.
So that goes back to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
The manager certified or the normal certification?
The manager certified because they're managing their
Doing that.
own business. So it's technical, right? But it is their own business. And really, the thing is, it's not that much more cost-wise, and it's really not that much more of a course. And it's the same, it's good for 5 years. So it's worth it for them to do it.
There you go. She said thanks. How about Lauren has a quick question about selling in other states. Not sure if you'll know, but if a Maine farm business can get all of their but if we are a Maine farm business, can we get all of our licensing done? All of our licensing that allows us to sell across state lines. So they're a mile from New Hampshire, or do you have to
Sure.
get licensing for both?
Are you, so if you're talking like the dairy license, right?
Mm.
So if you're doing cheeses and milks and things like that, that automatically you're going to get inspected by somebody who's certified with the FDA, and then you're allowed to sell across state lines without an issue. If you're talking about like canned sauces and jellies and jams and things like that, I mean, it's interstate commerce. It's like selling anything else. So those are licensed there.
She
Okay,
says
it's just baked goods and farm
Farm
items, not necessarily dairy. Yeah, my understand, I mean, I would check with New Hampshire and make sure that they don't have requirements, but, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm reading all these questions popping up.
You're good now.
So anyways, you just make sure that your neighbors in New Hampshire don't have some requirement you didn't know about, but you should be able to sell it without a problem. I mean, when I was bottling my sauces and things like that, and I've actually shipped baked goods, you know, to other states, and there hasn't been an issue. So, but there are items that certainly, if you were selling meats and things like that, that has to be FDA certified. And so that's totally different inspection process.
That's fair. Wade is just thinking about turning a building into a commercial kitchen. Also, congratulations. I love all these commercial kitchens coming out of this.
Great idea. Yep.
So he's asking, do we have any contractors that specialize in these buildings that we could recommend? And I think there are several who have done similar work. I know Jen Stein, who's with us, she's an SBDC through CEI Business Advisor. She used to, and I mean, I might be wrong about this, but I believe she used to manage food board.
Yep. Yeah.
So
she'd be a great resource when you're talking about building from the ground up to meet current requirements. Yep.
Yep. And so that's Jen Stein, STEIN.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with the I before E except after C.
Yeah.
Who knows? But she's with us through CEI similarly, the way that Chris joined us. So that would be a great resource. And likewise, all of our business advisors can gather information that you might not have access to. And so even if they don't specialize in it, we all rely on one another to help work through these. I'm constantly getting emails with cute little threads with the business advisor, like, has anybody ever done this before? And everybody responds with their resources. So it's a nice to see the team all work together in those cases. So you're in good hands one way or the other. Do food growers need a food and fuel license and mobile vendor license? They're looking to sell B2B.
So if you're just growing your produce and you're selling it to another business, it depends on the volume of the sale. But if you're selling it directly to the consumer and all you're selling is raw product, like a farm stand type of thing, you don't need a license. You don't need a mobile, I mean, but if you're going to a farmer's market, that may require a mobile vendor's license if you're actually taking all your farm product and going to a farmer's market. So I would check on that.
Great. They're saying thank you. And then are institutions or organizations, or what are some institutions or organizations that offer food certification courses that are accredited?
Sure, I can send you a list. There are private companies that do the ServSafe. So, but really, Maine Cooperative Extension is a really good resource, and that's right on the slide there. They also can give you a list of trainings that you might want as well, and they're going to be the least expensive too. So.
Yeah, so it sounds like that link is in the slides, but if there are any other resources, Chris can send them to me and I'll include them in the follow-up email. Otherwise, we're just getting lots of thank yous. Thank you for your help. This is very helpful. Lots of the same thank yous, which I always love to see. So thank you, Chris, and thank you to everyone for joining us. We know this is getting started with these kinds of things can seem pretty overwhelming, and we, as the Maine SBDC, are here to help with whatever trials or tribulations you may encounter along the way. So whether you're looking for actual resources or a little moral support, we're here to help. Chris is really good at both of those things from my experience.
Yeah. And I just want to let you know, I mean, my contact information is in the slide, so please feel free to send me an email directly to. If you have questions after this, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't necessarily have to be your advisor to talk to you. So, you know, we do ask that you register with the Maine, but there's a lot of people I know who are already registered with an advisor on this call, which is great. And, but we're here to help. So, And this is my wheelhouse, right? I love it. I've been doing probably everything I touched on, I did at one time. So, excited for people getting out there and doing it. It's a great industry, needs some new blood, needs that kitchen Wade. So thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of things that Maine needs all around. So like we said, we're here to help you, help Maine all around. And I'll just remind you that I will send out follow-up email later today with all of that information, and Chris's contact information will be right in there in case you have additional questions. But otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope we will see you at the next session.
Great. Thank you.